Hello, good afternoon, ladies. It is Sarah Shipton here from Scrapbooking with Sarah, and I'm coming live to you today for our Technique Tuesday, which should have been done on the 3rd of February, but I'm doing it the day after on the, what is today? Oh my gosh, the 4th of February. So I have finally caught up with our weekly scrapbooking challenges. And I know I only went live in here yesterday with the makeup challenge for week 4 of January, but yay, you get me 2 days in a row, aren't you ladies? Super lucky. And I am excited to be sharing a new scrapbooking workshop kit and a new paper suite and range of products for the month of February. So before I get into that, let's start with this week's challenge. We are creating a double page layout, which is on page 53 of the Reflections Scrapbook program. This is an older how-to pattern book that I've pulled off my shelf, and we are having lots of fun going back to basics. I have to tell you, I was a little challenged with this week's layout because it is called main frame quarter circle, and the idea is that you're going to cut a 5 by 5 inch square of paper and then actually turn that into a circle. Now they've obviously done that for this particular pattern. They have turned this into a baseball. So I had to think a little bit differently this week with the pattern, and then also for the placement of photos. So I'm going to give you some tips with that. But let's start with your base page of your scrapbook layouts. I have used 2 sheets of white willow cardstock, and I have actually gutted the base pages of my scrapbook. So if you don't know how to do that, be sure to check out the video that I posted in this group yesterday and on my Facebook page. I will upload that to my YouTube. It only goes for about 4 minutes, but it just goes through how to do that particular technique. It's going to save you weight in your scrapbook albums, but also on your paper, which therefore saves you money in the long term, especially if it is designer series paper or pattern paper that you're using. You don't want to be covering that with another sheet of paper. So you've got your 2 base pages there for your scrapbook layout, and then you're going to need another 2 sheets of either cardstock or designer series paper. I have used this beautiful yellow and pink ombre style sheet of designer series paper, which is from the Beach Boardwalk designer series paper pack. Okay, so I'm going to be sharing those products with you in a little bit more detail towards the end of this video today. So these 2 pieces of paper that are going over your base, you're going to cut them at 11 by 11 inches. Then you're going to need another sheet of, I've used designer series paper here, or cardstock. You're just going to need 1 sheet for that. And you're going to cut 2 pieces at 9 inches long by 4 inches wide. And these are going to go on the outside of your scrapbook layout. Okay. And then for the photo mat, I actually haven't cut piece C. This is for a large photo mat for a 5 by 7 inch photo. So I've cut my photo mats to coordinate with the size photos that I have used on the layout. So I've got some 4 by 6 inch photos and then some 3 by 4 inch photos. So these photo mats have been cut at 6 1/4 by 4 1/4, and these photo mats have been cut at 3 1/4 by 4 1/4. Okay, and I've just used white willow for that, just so they really pop. And just the blues in the ocean here. These photos were taken on Yorks, which is the York Peninsula in South Australia. These photos were taken in January 2023, so a few years ago, but we go camping over on Yorks for a couple of weeks typically over New Year's every year. And this particular year we were camping at Point Turton, and we took a day trip to a local beach just nearby with some 4-wheel drive access, and I think we were only like 1 of 2 groups of people on this beach this day. So a beautiful secluded little beach, gorgeous water. I mean, we've been very blessed to see some beautiful oceans in the world, but let me tell you, there is nothing like the water at home, that is for sure. So these photos are just capturing a fun day that we had, swimming, sunbathing, fishing, and just chilling out, reading our book, listening to some music, having a couple of drinks on the sand. So fun times with friends. Okay, so, and then lastly, the other remaining two pieces of cardstock or designer series paper you're going to cut is 5 by 5 inches. So I have not turned this into a circular pattern. I have left my paper square at 5 by 5 inches, and I've made this a feature running along the bottom of my scrapbook layout here, where I've got two photos and then I've got my title through here. So I have used the alphabet dies the party alphabet dies, sorry, to actually cut my large letters out, my alphabet letters out. They're all in capitals. And I'm going to be demonstrating this technique here to you today, which is the ink blending using the sponge daubers. Now, in terms of placement for your papers, your 11 by 11 each piece is just going to be going smack bang in the middle. So you've got a 1/2 inch border around the outside here. So you're going to stick this piece of paper 1/2 inch from the inside and 1/2 inch down. So I just typically eyeball that over the top. And then the next piece is going to be this 9 by 4 inch strip down the outside. I have got this flush up against the edge of this 11 by 11 inch piece, and then it is going to be 1/2 inch down from the top there. And then my 5 by 5 inch pieces are in line with the base page of my scrapbook layout. Okay, so I got those pieces of paper on the layout as kind of really like the base, and then I had a little bit of time to think about, well, where are my photos going to go? Because I didn't want to use a 5 by 7 inch photo as the pattern described. And so I thought, well, let's pop a couple of portrait 3 by inch photos on here. So this is the gorgeous water pattern paper from the Beach Boardwalk Designer Series paper pack. And then I've just matted them in white willow, and I've actually got them butted right up against each other in the middle here. Okay, so I eyeballed this. I didn't measure that at all. I've got an even side on the left and the right, and then an even side at the top and the bottom. You can see here that the width of that obviously is not the same. If you wanted to remeasure this paper, so then the width of that was the same the whole way around, you could certainly do that. But I didn't worry too much about that. I just eyeballed those photos on. And then obviously I had this space through here, so I thought that would be good to put a couple of landscape photos on there. I don't typically take a lot of landscape photos because I use my phone to take photos with. I typically am pointing and shooting, right? And so your phone is typically upright, so then you end up with all these portrait photos. So I thought it would be fun to use this space for some landscape photos there. And because I didn't cut this 5 by 5 inch square into a circle, I mean, you certainly could do that. I did think about it. I think that would look pretty cool, where you could actually, if you've got like a cutting template of some sort, or even just like a side plate, you could actually measure and cut that evenly. Admittedly, I used to have a cutting system a long time ago, which I got rid of actually a couple of years ago. So all of that particular cutting system I don't have or use anymore, but you could certainly just trace or use a circle template of some sort to actually turn that into one big sort of semicircle. I think that would look pretty cool for sure. But I just kept them square, and obviously there was room here for some 3 by 4 inch photos. You could even put 4 by 4 inch photos on this 5 by 5 inch square. So really, you've kind of got a fair bit of free play here in terms of your orientation and your size of photos that you're going to choose to put on your scrapbook layout. By popping these two photos here, I obviously ended up with this beautiful space through here where I could do my title. I've used some of the leftover stickers from my Beach Time Scrapbooking Workshop kit. There was a sticker which is kind of like a little journal box. I've actually just matted that on some Daffodil Delight cardstock that was left over from the Scrapbooking Workshop kit. Okay, so let's get into first things first. Let's do the technique. I want to show you how to do this ink blending, and the reason I wanted to do the ink blending this week is that this is also the featured technique in the Beach Time Scrapbooking Workshop Kit. So I'm going to elaborate on that in a little bit more detail after I demonstrate the creative portion today. We've got a couple of people that have joined us. Sonia and Emily, hello, how are you? I'm doing my video a little earlier today than what I would normally. I've got a very busy week this week, and in fact, actually no, I better not share that because it might be a surprise. I was going to share something fun with you that I'm going to be doing this week, but I might not be allowed to do that, so I better just shush before I tell everyone about that. Okay, so what I've got here is some grid paper. You can actually purchase this grid paper. I don't know if you knew this, but this is available in the online store, and it's not really great for scrapbooking, if I'm being honest, because it's not 12 by 12 in height. It obviously goes out to 16 inches in length, but it's only 10 inches in height. So it's not ideal for scrapbooking, if I'm being honest. But I do use it in this instance here, where you can see as some scratch or scrap paper. So to do this particular technique, I mean, the reason I'm showing, I've already explained the reason I'm showing you this. So these die cuts were left over from my Beach Time Scrapbooking Workshop Kit. So we've got a little journal box here with a seashell and a starfish. We've got the word pool. So you get the word pool and also the word beach. And then you've got this die cut here with the word sun. So we actually punched out the letters from here, and then there was also some white letters with the word sun, and that's what we actually did the ink sponging on for the Scrapbooking Workshop Kit. So I'm going to show you that. But I thought it would be fun to teach this technique this week. So you need your sponge daubers. You can buy these in 5 packs. I can't remember how much they are off the top of my head, but I will post a link to all the products that I'm sharing with you today. So you'll need a packet of the sponge daubers, and the 2 ink colors that we're using, the classic stamping pads. We've got Summer Splash, which is, well, it's kind of Summer Splash, but it's actually really pool party for my blue nails this week, girls. We've got Summer Splash for the classic stamping pad, and we've got Daffodil Delight, okay? So we are going to flick open these ink pads. Now, if you struggle with opening these ink pads, a great tip for you is to just pop your thumbs at the back where the hinge is and press down like so, apply pressure, and that's just going to pop up the ink pad, the lid, and you'll turn that over and slide that back into itself. Okay, and what we're going to do, I started with the sponge dauber. Now, you could also use blending brushes for this technique, and the thing I love about the Stampin' Up! Blending brushes is that there are large size blending brushes. Now, I haven't invested in them yet because honestly, I still had my blending brushes from when I was with Close to My Heart. And so the blending brush itself in terms of size is pretty much the same size as this blending brush here. But then they also do smaller size blending brushes as well, okay? And I'm showing you the sponge daubers today because that's what we used for the Scrapbooking Workshop Kit. But I actually find that by popping this on your pointy finger, you've got a little bit, and you can pinch it here with your thumb, you've got a little bit more control, I feel, with the sponge daubers, okay? So I have already cut out a letter, the letter B. I've already cut out the letter with my white willow cardstock using my party alphabet dies. And I'm just going to dab my sponge dauber in the ink pad. Now, because these ink pads are quite juicy, you only really need to kind of dab them in there once. But if you want to do a little tap off just to get the excess ink off the sponge dauber, then that is a good idea. And what I did was I actually started in the middle. I've had some good practice with this. I started in the middle because I wanted to kind of have like this dark section through the middle of my letter here and go lighter at the top. So it was also like an ombre effect, much like the paper. So we're going to start through the middle here, and I'm just going to apply some pressure there. And then I'm just going to take off some of that pressure and drag that ink up through the top here. Okay, you might need to, as it's taking the ink off your sponge dauber, you might need to apply a bit more pressure on the top here. And you could even go over it. If you wanted to, you could ink it up again. But the thing with because these ink pads are so juicy, you don't want to go crazy with the ink. You can see here where like I've slightly bent the letter. You don't want to go too crazy with the ink, especially if the paper is thin. I found that when I was ink blending the die cut, this is much thinner than our cardstock, right? So if you're going to town on the die cut, the ink is actually going to soften the paper, and then you're going to run the likelihood of that like tearing or breaking. Okay, so it's not really the same with this particular cardstock, because our two-tone cardstock, or white willow in this case, is thicker. So all I've done here is just blended some of the Daffodil Delight ink on there, and I've only done half the letter, because what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to take this out of shot so I've got a little bit more room. What I'm going to do here is grab my other sponge dauber, which I've got the Summer Splash on, and starting in the middle here, I'm just going to ink over where the two colours are going to meet. Okay, and that is going to turn, I think I need a little bit more there. That is going to turn part of that colour green as the yellow and the blue meet. Okay, and we are just going to ink over the rest of the bottom of that letter. So depending on it's really a personal preference on how dark you want your ink to be, how far up your letters you want to go. It really is entirely up to you. Definitely a personal preference. I'm just going to colour that a little bit more. So you want to hold that in place with one hand and then just ink blend over the other. And as the ink settles into that cardstock, you will see that take shape in terms of the colour. And let's move this out the way so I can bring the layout back into view. Here, you end up with this really cool ink effect with the yellow and the blue, and then through the middle here where it starts to turn green as the two colours are meeting. In fact, I think I want to go over that just a little bit more. So it's really just experimenting, having a play with that, and getting the effect that you like. Now, you can obviously do this with all sorts of colour combinations. I love how they've used the Summer Splash and the Daffodil Delight. I'm just going to close these ink pads over because I'm going to bring in some other product, and I don't want to set anything on top of that and end up with ink all over the bottoms. So that is the little ink blending technique today that I'm sharing with you, and you're going to do that technique on the Scrapbooking Workshop Kit layouts, which I'm just going to bring into view now. Okay, so I'm going to start with layout number 1 for the Scrapbooking Workshop Kit. So let me grab my mini catalogue. So we're working with a Scrapbooking Workshop Kit and a suite of products from the January to April 2026 catalogue for February. That's my personal preference to do that. The Scrapbooking Workshop Kit you'll find on pages 12 and 13. So you're going to create 3 double page layouts, which I'm going to share with you today. It has the feature technique here to blend ink with sponge daubers. So if you want to do this technique on your layout, you'll need to invest in your Daffodil Delight and Summer Splash plastic stamping pads, plus also a pack of the sponge daubers, or you can use your blending brushes if you've got them already. The idea is to learn how to do that with a new product for sure. Now, the Beach Time Scrapbooking Workshop Kit also coordinates with the Beach Boardwalk Suite Collection, which you'll find on pages 46 and 47. I actually invested in a second packet of the Designer Series paper, so you will get some of these papers in your Scrapbooking Workshop Kit. The thing I love about the Scrapbooking Workshop kits is that you only get the exact amount of product that you need in terms of paper and cardstock. You get a sheet of stickers and you get 2 sheets of die cuts as well. So the die cuts are exclusive to the Scrapbooking Workshop kit, and then some of the papers are also exclusive to the Scrapbooking Workshop kit. Now, here we go. Oh no, that's not what I was looking for. I took the post-it note off. Okay, so Beach Boardwalk on pages 46 and 47 of your mini. I invested in a separate pack of the Designer Series paper and also the puffy stickers, which I'm going to show in the close-up, and I use them on my layout for this week. And then there is also a Scrapbooking from Scratch range in the back of your mini. And on pages 62 and 63, you've got some additional beach time products which coordinate with the kit and also the suite. So this really is just the Designer Series paper again, or you can get it with a sticker sheet. Now, it's important to note that the stickers in this Designer Series pack are the same stickers that you're going to get in the Scrapbooking Workshop kit. So just keep that in mind, because if you were to buy a separate pack of the Designer Series paper with the stickers, you're going to double up on these stickers, okay, which is never a bad idea if it's product that you know that you're going to use a lot of in your albums. You can also invest in a packet. I love this. This is some colours of the two-tone cardstock. So one of the biggest things I hear from people I meet when they're new to meet scrapbooking is they're like, I just do not know how to coordinate up colours. Well, be sure to check out one of my YouTube videos where I walk you through using the Colour Coach, which is a interactive wheel that you can purchase, and that helps you to coordinate different colour families together. But the thing that I love that Stampin' Up! Does really, really well is that they actually take all of the guesswork out for us. So if I am working with a suite of products, I'm pretty much only using the colours that the design team have used or pulled from our suite. I think we have about 50 colours all up. So I pretty much only work with the colours that coordinate with that particular suite or kit. So we've got Strawberry Slush, Timid Tiger, Daffodil Delight, Granny Apple Green, Summer Splash, and Petunia Pop. It's also worthwhile checking the suite because this also has Pool Party in here as well, okay? So not Granny Apple Green, but Pool Party, but they're all going to go, right? So then there's also a stamp set. So admittedly, I haven't invested in the stamp set. I like really big stamps for my scrapbooking. These are much smaller, so I know that's in the Scrapbooking from Scratch range, but I feel like this is very much, great for card making for sure. And you can see really the hero page where you've got some samples of how they've used that stamp set with the scrapbooking products. So I'd really love to see some bigger stamps come out and bigger stamps with coordinating dies from Stampin' Up. That would be good for scrapbooking. So fingers crossed we see a bit more of that when our annual catalogue is launched in May. So they are the products for the Beach Time and Beach Boardwalk range. So coming back to the Scrapbooking Workshop kit, you're going to create 3 layouts with that kit, and you've got the cutting instruction here for both your Designer Series paper and cardstock. You've got your prep tips, and then you've got your assembly instructions. So it's actually step-by-step crafting. If you are new to scrapbooking, or you haven't scrapbooked for a little while, or this is a different style of scrapbooking for you, then you are going to really love the Scrapbooking Workshop kits. So let's talk about the layouts now. This is layout number 1, which is called Beach Day. And straight away when I saw these colours, I knew that they were going to go perfect for some photos from a holiday that we took a couple of years ago to Mexico when I had my time with Close to My Heart, and I earned an incentive trip to beautiful Mexico, and we flew into Cancun. So this was a day at a beach club that Darren and I had in Cancun. We had a couple of days, just the 2 of us, before we met all of the Close to My Heart group. And this is literally where I was sitting. No word of a lie. You've probably heard me tell the story before, but I had 11 wonderful years with Close to My Heart, and we actually got the news that beautiful Jeanette Linton was going to be closing her business her close to my heart company, after many, many years in business, we actually got the news while I was sitting in this pool at this beach club. So this is me at the beginning of the morning, having a lovely, relaxing time, toasting to a great day in with a margarita. This is the before the email. And this is after the email. I actually got some text messages from my friends back home in Australia who had seen their email before I had seen my email. And my beautiful husband just said to the bartender, keep the tequila and the margaritas coming for my wife, please. So this was after I got the email. I look very relaxed, but on the inside, I was like freaking out. But it all worked out, and now we've got this beautiful, wonderful home with Stampin' Up, and I could not be more grateful. So these photos, I wish there was enough room to journal that story on there. But I wanted to share that with you all today, just as a little bit of background there. So I knew that these colors would work perfectly. You can see here where I've added a couple of flip flaps on. And one of the things that I love to do with the scrapbooking workshop kits is get extra photos on if I can. So you can see here that this was meant to be a journal box. And instead of having a journal box here, I've added an extra photo. I've put a flip flap on top here. There was already a journal box on this side of the layout, so that suited me enough for my story. You wouldn't think so, given the one I've just shared with you. And then we've got another flip flap over the top here. So we had an incredible day at this beautiful beach club in Cancun. And I knew I was just going to love creating with this suite because we love the beach, we love swimming, we love summer. We actually have a pool, and so I quite often have lots of pool photos to scrapbook as well. This layout, number 2, is also from the scrapbooking workshop kit, and these photos were also taken during our time in Mexico on the incentive trip. We had a beautiful day being hosted by Close to My Heart. We went out on a catamaran. This is one of my beautiful friends, Monica Wihongi. She was the president of Close to My Heart. And in fact, this day, Sarah Douglas, the CEO of Stampin' Up, was actually on the catamaran here with us. And I do not know how or why, but I do not have a photo of me and Sarah on this layout, which is very sad. But I do have other photos of her and I in Mexico, so I will definitely be sure to scrapbook those. But we had an incredible day on this beautiful catamaran. We were actually meant to go out to the Mesoamerican Reef, which, fun fact, is the second largest reef in the world, aside from, of course, the beautiful Great Barrier Reef here in Australia. And we did not get out to the Mesoamerican Reef because we hit rough weather and we had to turn around and dock in this much more calmer little cove where we relaxed in the water on this fun surf mat. And we were diving off the top of the catamaran into the water. We had lunch on the back of the boat, and it was just a great day full of sunshine and smiles. Now, this particular layout has got a 5 by 7 inch photo on it, which was perfect for my photo from the resort that we stayed in for the incentive trip. And then here we have got, for the second layout, this was meant to be where the journaling was, but I really wanted this photo of myself and Monica on here. This is my team leader, Susan Wilmot. So I wanted me and the girls on this layout. So what I've done here is I've actually cut a 3 by 3 inch, and maybe that's 4 by 4. I'm not sure what, I can check that. Anyway, I've cut a journal box and I've popped that on the top here. And this is where we've done the ink blending. So this is using the sponge daubers. Actually, I'll take this out of the memory protector because I've got room to do that here. We actually did the sponge daubing around the outside of the journal box. And then on some of the die cuts, you are going to use your sponge dauber to ink around some of the die cuts in your scrapbooking workshop kit. We also did that here with the star as well. And there's another star here. Okay, so I've got a couple of flip flaps on here. I lost my hat this day, this beautiful day here. This is me on the, before we got on the catamaran with my hat, and then we lost the hat, so I had to wear another cap. But that was pretty funny. That was a fun story with Monica. I gave her my hat to look after, and the wind took it away. I got seasick actually on this catamaran, and had to go and sit up the top. And last but by no means least, this is layout number 3. I'll take this one out of its memory protector. So this is Summertime for Sun, and this is where we have done the sponge daubing on layout number 3 of the Scrapbooking Workshop Kit. So just like I demonstrated in the video today, you're going to need your Summer Splash ink, your Daffodil ink, and some sponge daubers, and exactly the same technique that I used previously. Now, this particular layout, the thing I love about this paper is actually already pre-designed. So this is exclusive paper. You can't get this paper if you buy just the designer series paper on its own. And you can tell the paper that's exclusive in the Scrapbooking Workshop Kit because it is plain white on the back, okay? So these are the exclusive papers for the Scrapbooking Workshop Kit. You're going to do this fun pattern with your papers and your ticket die cuts. And this one I kept relatively the same, except I haven't used, this journal box was meant to go here, and instead I've added an extra photo. So when I add extra photos, I will always cut the Scrapbooking Workshop Kit papers the way that the guide tells me to do it. But when it comes time to assemble, that's when I'm like, could I take a journal box off and put an extra photo on? And then all I had to do was cut some extra cardstock down. Typically you've got leftover cardstock in your kit that you can use. So all I've done is cut down some cardstock to get that extra photo on. This is fun because you've got a die cut border that's going to go over your photo. And on this side here, I kept that as it was, but I've just added a flip flap over the top here. So I could get a couple of extra photos onto this layout. So my journal box is underneath, and then I've got some photos here. So these photos also taken from our time in Mexico. It was close to my heart. We had a tour to do some, it wasn't snorkeling. We visited like an underground cave system. I've forgotten what the name of them are, but there's a particular name for these underground caves that you can swim in Mexico. And then we went to a beach club after, which I was very excited to visit because I actually had this on my list to go. And when I found out this was one of the excursions that we were doing, I was like, even better. So there we are, barefoot in the sand, drinking margaritas, having some burritos and some guacamole. I just love Mexican food and love the beach. So this workshop kit is going to be great for all of your beach photos, your summer photos, your swimming photos. And I'm also going to be sharing some tips with you throughout the month on other ways that you could use these papers that are not necessarily going to be beach related. So stay tuned for that. Thank you all for watching this week. Typically my first Technique Tuesday video for the month goes a little longer than normal because I also introduce you to the Scrapbooking Workshop Kit that I'm going to be showcasing for the month as well. So I hope that you have found this week's Technique Tuesday helpful, especially for those of you that are going to do the kit. You now know how to do your technique with your sponge daubers and your ink pads. Have a great week, everyone. I can't wait to see your layout and what you create this week. Thank you so much for watching, Emily. Hi, Belinda. Thanks for joining in today. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Bye for now.